Hi, I'm Nancy Rink. Welcome to my Invisible Machine Applique tutorial. For this tutorial, we're going to focus on one block from my El Camino Real quilt. We're going to focus on this block. It's block 5. And that quilt is from my book titled El Camino Real. So what we're going to learn is the method I use to do invisible machine applique on the sewing machine. So no hand work, no hand applique. And if you want to sew along with me making this exact block, the pattern's available for free online. You can download it at nancyrinkdesigns.com. Or you could order a kit. I put together a couple kits for you. This one is featuring my Celeste fabric collection, so that's a blue and white version. This one is featuring the Let It Grow collection, so it's very bright and cheery. And then this one is more in line with this quilt. It's a different block, but if you order the kit, you get the block pattern. And this one has just a solid fabric border and not the checkerboard border. But they all feature the same technique. You can also order on the website the supply kit. The supply kit comes with glue, invisible thread, the bias press bars, and several sheets of the C&T wash away applique paper that I used for this method. So get your supplies ready, either order online or download my free pattern off the website, nancyrinkdesigns.com, and we're going to be ready to sew. Here are the supplies you need for this project. Bias press bars for your stems, a clear monofilament or nylon thread, a glue pen that's in some sort of a color, like pink, blue, or you could just use the good old purple glue stick. I like the school version because it's non-toxic and it's washable. And then you need this tacky glue. I like this glue pen. It gives nice little dots, and this will help you secure your applique patches to the background fabric once they're prepared. And it is tacky, so you can reposition patches. You just have to hit them with an iron. It'll warm the glue up and release it, so you can actually pull things off. Something pointy, a seam ripper, or a good old cuticle stick. Those will help you turn your edges and control your pieces when you're sewing them. Then the key to this whole process is this wash away applique paper. This one's by C&T. There are others on the market. It has a papery side, and then it has an adhesive side. And you're going to trace your shapes on the paper side, cut them out, and then with a hot iron you will adhere them to the wrong side of your fabric. And here is an example of the basket. It's been traced, and I like to label my patches so I know what is what. So go ahead and get yours prepared. I have mine ready. Here they are, all traced and cut out and ready to go. Piece of just scrap fabric, and now I'm going to dot it with some of my tacky fabric glue. So here's on this backing, on this piece of fabric that I'm using for my backing. Now you can try your glue stick, but your glue stick is really not going to secure that as tightly as you'd like, because you know your presser foot and your hands are going to be fighting against this. All right, so we're going to put your stitch on a zigzag and turn your length down, stitch length down, and turn your width down. And right now we're just going to start, we're going to guess. So that's the trick, getting it where you're comfortable, the stitch width and length. I'm using this foot. It's not my favorite foot to use for this, but it illustrates a good purpose. So I ideally like a Claire foot, but I don't have one for this machine. But do you see that little dot there on that? I don't know if you could see it, that dot there on that presser foot. That shows you where you want ideally the edge of your applique piece. All right, so let's just see if we can get this started. And we're going to go slow. And what you want, one stitch on, one stitch off, one stitch on, one stitch off. And you're just going to go at about this pace. So that doesn't look too bad from the front. You're going to see these holes, but once you start working your piece and it gets machine quilted and you wash it, it will be fine. Let's look at the tension on the back, and I used this darker thread so you could see. And that actually looks pretty good. Do what's called sewing off the foundation. So we're going to prepare our flowers by the middle circle to the flower part. And I've already turned all my edges, and I have already secured this with some dabs of my tacky glue. So we're going to just pick a spot. Make sure you have a nice long tail of that monofilament. We're going to pick a spot to start, and I might need to get this adjusted a little bit, because remember we want that dot on this edge. It's our guiding edge. So let me see if I can come in a little closer here so you can see what I'm doing. All right, that's pretty good. All right. So now some people ask me, do you backstitch? I don't usually backstitch. What I usually do at the beginning is I sort of just hold my applique to keep it from advancing, and it takes a couple stitches, you know, on top of itself. So now just proceed. Work your way around. Don't watch the needle. The needle does the same thing every time. It goes up and down, zigzag, zigzag. Watch where that dot, that positioning dot is on your presser foot, and just keep it on the line. And move this around. Now, if you look at this little pointy thing. Do you see that little blurb out? So this is where you can use one of your little pointy sticks. Now that one doesn't do much, but I will guarantee, I bet this one, I could poke that in just a little bit. Give it a little poke. Oh my goodness, and I even got it aligned on my underneath. Okay, that's amazing. That doesn't happen very often. All right, so, you know, if you wanted to, this is loose if you felt like you needed to cut some away, but since we've already cut out the middle of our applique paper, we have reduced the bulk there already. And this gives you a nice, very firm piece of applique with all its edges turned. All right, 4 more flowers to go, and then we'll move on to stems. So here we are, we're ready to secure the stems, stitch the stems, our background fabric piece. So I've got all of the stems placed. I've got them glued down with my tacky glue. And always make them of course, a little longer because they have to go under the piece that's going to come on top of them. So when you're doing applique, you always start obviously from like the bottom up. So what's going to be covered up needs to go first. So you need to just sort of pay attention to that. So I changed my bobbin thread to match my background. And if you are sewing this kit and want to use exactly the same thread, make sure I have a long tail. I am using Aurifil, I think it's 2310. Yes, 2310. It's a very lovely linen-y color that goes quite well with stuff. All right, so I think I've got myself ready to go. So I'm starting, now I'm just holding that in place. And I'm going to stitch. Okay, now I'm going to put my needle down. And I'm going to rotate this. Now, if you want, you could stitch across the top. You really don't need to. And now I'm going to put my needle up, drag my thread over, and then I'm going to stitch again. Okay, and to secure this in, I'm just going to hold it to keep it from advancing so it stitches on itself. Now, put my needle up. And I'm going to drag this, I'm going to rotate this background fabric. I'm going to drag this over here. And now I'm going to start sewing again. And even if this bunches up, don't worry about it. You're okay. We're going to go back at the end and snip those. Now let's look at how we're going to tackle the flower. This is by far the most difficult of all the applique patches, and if you can accomplish sewing this, you can do anything when it comes to machine applique. So once again, let's get started. Now we don't want to start out here on one of these tips, and we don't want to start just down here in the curve. I try and find like where I'm coming down the slope where it's sort of straight to get started. So I got myself positioned with my dot on the seam line. Now, the key to this is going slow and knowing when to turn. So for inside curves like that, so for the valleys, you're going to pivot with your needle in the valley, in the curve. So let me get there again. See, I'm pivoting just a little bit. Okay, sometimes you gotta raise your presser foot. If you have a knee lift on your machine, it's a lot easier. Okay, and now on the hills, you're gonna pivot on the outside. So you're just gonna make all these little adjustments as you go. And once you've done a few of these, it does go much faster. Okay, and then you just continue working around this until you get to the end of the flower.